Hi, this is Danny J. Lewis. I hope you're all well and your families too. This is a deconstruction video on Ableton Live of my 2020 refix of the classic Spend the Night. And this is out today, the 8th of May, along with some other wicked remixes. And this was a challenge for me because it's a song that I've heard so many times. And I've developed a bit of a love-hate relationship with it because of that fact. But this was an opportunity to do something fresh with it. And what I wanted to do was to give it a more kind of like garage house kind of vibe, because that vibe is popular. But essentially, this is still a sound that has, hints of what was going on in the 90s. Okay. And this ended up as a version that I'm very happy with. Okay. And it has ended up as the lead mix on the release. And this has come out on a label called Upcycle Recordings. This is DJ Fenn's label. And, it's great to be releasing with his label. So we'll take a look and we'll explore some of this and we'll take our time. So I'm going to play from the beginning. And because this is an extended version, it of course starts with the beats. Just going to open up the drum rack so we can see what's going on here. You can see that all of these sounds here are on separate outputs. Let's take a look at the actual drum rack itself. And you can see here that this is a preset kit, Safe House kit from the Ableton library, but it's very customized. And what I'm going to do is just show you the programming first so you can see what's going on here. And there are some nice kind of subtle velocity changes here with the open hat. The rest of these are all at maximum velocity. And, it's a selection of the elements from that particular drum kit. But like I said, some of these have been customized. Okay. And sometimes I start with a preset kit. Sometimes I start with my own choices of samples. But in this case, for speed, I had the preset kit to start off with and then tweaked it to match the kind of stuff that I was doing. Let's take it forward to bar 17. There's a few elements coming in now. Okay, so we had the beats building up and there were some subtle differences between the beats on the first 8 bars into the next 8. Okay, so very, very subtle differences. It's been a while since I've looked at this actually because, as it is with many tracks, they get done way in advance of the release. This is my first time looking at it again for a while. Okay, but here we have a new element coming in, and this is a bit random. This is just goes to show what I'm like. Where I have a kit here, I could have included this sound on that kit, but actually I've just set it up on its own separate out here. And this is a hi-hat from an old Herbie Hancock track actually. I shouldn't really be disclosing that, should I? But let's have a listen. There we go. And that's being used to just add a new kind of texture. It's very subtle in the background. But the other thing that we got going on here is we got a vocal element. We just had a wind chime there to introduce this section. It's a very common thing that I do. And we've also got a crowd sample here. And then there is the sub bass. Okay, so let me just come up. Just trying to remind myself where I place this. Oh yeah, so look, this is this track here, so it's bass. I'm going to show you what's going on with this. We've got 3 separate tracks for the bass, and let's have a listen to how it is on that intro. And I'll let you into a little secret actually. The vibe that I wanted to get here, and I'm not saying that I ended up getting it correct because I didn't, and it ended up being its own thing, was the David Harness remix of After Party by Coffee Brown. I always loved the way that track started off, so I wanted to have something that had kind of a vibe with that, and it would be something that would just keep building and building until the main drop. So have a listen. Just going to bring this up. So in that section, we had a couple of other elements come in. There was a chord, which is a chord sample, and then also a piano, okay, to back it up. And this is to start building up kind of the energy towards the point when we have this breakdown coming up, and you'll hear that soon. So then the high street comes in. Also, something else I have to point out, there was a reverse vocal here. And what that was is that very classic reverse reverb trick where you take the vocal, you put a massive reverb, a big tail, and then flip it around, reverse it. And it's got this real kind of texture, a reminiscent texture of the original. You know, if you know the song Spend the Night, you're going to recognize that vocal, hopefully even if it's reversed. So let's come to the section when the high string comes in. So high string creates tension, and it's a little bit melodic as well. So real throwback there, that fill, you heard that, right? So let me just solo this. This is the classic from the H-Man dub. But what I did was I used a different sample. You know, the timing is the same, the texture is the same, but it's not actually from that original recording. It's a different sound, okay? But it was deliberately designed to be reminiscent of that. And we've gone into this section now where there's a piano motif coming in, all right? So let's just go back a little bit. Now here's that piano riff. This is being filtered. Let me switch to the automation so you can see this. Here we go, automation for auto filter cutoff frequency. And of course there was the vocal coming in there, you know, just to really signpost the fact that it's Spend the Night. And what this is doing is this is echoing off in that gap. So there was a deliberate gap. If it was carrying on with that repetition, it would have been a little bit boring. So you'll see there's some automation to create that echo in the gap, see here? And that's on the echo boy down here. There we go. So there's that classic vocal. It's the one that everybody recognizes. So this piano is a very different vibe, okay, compared to the original. But that's what I wanted. I wanted something very different. And so we got a vocal here looping to build up to the point when everything kind of kicks in. Okay, so have a listen. And you can see there that once again that reverse reverb comes in, but this is being panned so that it creates a slightly different kind of left and right motion. So that feels a bit more interesting. But then everything is cut short to allow for the timbale. It's not really timbale, is it? The percussive hits that we've got coming in there to have a lot more space and then kicking in with the bass line. So we got the piano riff now underpinned by bass. And what I didn't show you before was that the bass itself is coming from operator. So it's a very simple bass sound. Just two oscillators, mainly a sine wave, but here, you know, using the FM mode to add a little bit extra kind of bite to the sound using the second oscillator. And that is on its own track because I wanted that nice and heavy. So I'm not doing much of the EQ there. But what I wanted to do is to have something that sounded almost like a real live bass. All right, so I've called it real bass. So have a listen. So this is Contact, Scarby bass. I didn't really feel that that had the subweight that I needed. So you can see what I've done is I've rolled off the frequencies below 138 Hertz. And actually what I've also done is I've got this other sub bass here underpinning that, but I've done a little bit of a dip here. You can see about 107 hertz because it felt like it was too muddy to have that frequency content there. So I've just eased that back and it feels like it works well. So those two together and that felt like it had the bass weight that I needed. So we got the chorus, we've got an organ coming in. What am I using here? Contact. So this is the Vintage Organs collection. Basic Gospel. That's a lovely sounding organ. High string again. So just to show you there, some automation applied again on that vocal to create those echoes leading off into the next section. And because the song doesn't have a verse, I needed something that felt like a verse in a way, something different. All right. So what we've got here is the piano riff changes and the bass line changes, but still the rhythm is the same. It's just different notes to have a different feel. There is a very treated version of the vocal here as well with a ton of reverb on it. I'm just going to show you here what I did. And this is running through this kind of telephone kind of vibe. So it's a very narrow band of frequencies that we can hear and then running through the black hole. So the black hole is a really expansive reverb. And so that's adding that kind of radio vox kind of vibe. And also it's got that vocal sample on it as well, again, and just to give it some new energy and to bring up also at the same time this crowd sample. Then we've got something new coming up. So the organ sound that we heard before, different notes, and then a pad. This is silent. As you can see, I'm using an outdated version. I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. The other thing that I did was I added some kind of vocal triggers in that section. There's a few of these, just to really kind of liven it up. Okay, so you heard that, and they're over here. So that's one of the vocals triggered up and down. And also, you know, that pad, the silence that we saw, that's rising up. So that builds up a nice energy on there, leading into the chorus again. The chorus is the chorus without the vocal, you know, so it's edited here just to make it a little bit more interesting. And also that piano is filtering up again. And now we've got the brass, and I put this particular brass pattern in the original, the very first version. And this is coming from the Korg M1, patch called Brass of Power. I'll solo that for you. It sounds quite cheap and nasty on its own, but in the mix sounds good. Okay, so we have the big breakdown at the end, which is using that verse section, piano automating up and then going down again. And this has got that very cliched trick where you take the last chord and just extend it, then have a gap, and then everything kicks back. So nothing particularly original, but it works. Okay, something else you would have heard here was on the sub bass, this was rising up, and so I took pitch bend and just lifted that upwards, so it's got a nice kind of solid sub weight that gets lighter towards the end because the pitch goes higher. And then what happens is it just has that intro section again on the outro. And I'll tell you something, when I first did this, I actually had the chorus again. But the problem was it just felt so much like, oh my gosh, you know, I've heard this too many times. And actually it felt super fresh to actually have this, having the intro section on the outro. It felt like just the right thing to do. And I'm really happy that I made the decision. So once again, same elements. And really what we're doing now is just removing stuff over time, particularly on the beat side. You can see that here and the bass. So we're creating the beats for the DJs to blend the next track in. And what you're listening to at the moment is the pre-master. So this was mastered once again by Stuart Ketteridge from Southeast Studios, and I'm very pleased that it went his way, as were the other remixes. He's mastered those. So that's pretty much it. So one thing I'll tell you about actually is that I had to do a radio edit of this track, and I didn't just do a chop, you know, of the main parts of the song. I actually put some time into doing so, and that's something that I'd really recommend for you guys. So if you are ever going to need to do a shorter radio edit, really make it a piece in itself. Okay, don't just go and chop sections out and do fades and so on. I really recommend doing something, but that's an entirely different subject altogether. Just want to say thanks to everybody supporting the music. That includes everybody supporting Just Underground releases as well. If you're spinning the track, please let me know. I'm always keen to check out live streams or mix sessions that you guys are doing. If you do have any questions, I'll see if I can get back if you leave a comment below.